Welcome back in, everybody. Football Friday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Paul Domowitch, Hall of Fame selector, longtime reporter for the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best to do it here in the city. Domo, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Domo. I don't know how much you heard when you popped in the green room there, but Jimmy, our buddy Jimmy Kempski, came out with his dumpster buyer series, which is always fun. People enjoy, and he did the Eagles today, and we got into talking about some of the things he was saying, and one of them, I'm a little bit higher than most people, and it's all projection, is that the Eagles pass rush will be better, I think, than people think, because mainly I look at Bryce Huff and I say, I think that guy's going to be a pretty good player. And he's very young. He hasn't played a lot. When I talk about, but when you watch him on film, he doesn't strike me, Dom, as the guy who's going to have trouble playing a lot of snaps. Like, we're worried about the conditioning of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. And there's a reason, because they were forced to play a lot of snaps. And, they need to get better at the conditioning aspect. Certainly not from the talent perspective of Jalen, but from a conditioning aspect. And you can go back to their days at Georgia and, the rotational system, because they had so much talent there. They're not used to it. And that's a process. Bryce Huff is one of those guys that just comes and he's like Brandon in the fact that he's always, the motor is always at 100. He's always coming. So he might be unsuccessful, but I don't think it's going to be because of the snap number. So I think it's a very Eaglesy decision. There, you have a player who's played a lot of snaps, maybe he's starting the downside of his career, and they're trying to swap him out. I think it might work. I'm a little bit higher than most people. Where are you on that scale?
Yeah, I mean, they swapped him out, but I mean, it was mostly motivated by Hassan's demand for more money, and that's where the tread on the tire comes in. I mean, I don't think if Reddick was willing to play under his contract and didn't make waves,
oh yeah, he'd be
I
back.
don't think there would have been a trade.
No.
It's just that they looked at the investment here. I mean, that's where you look at the tread tire and the snaps and say, are we going to get our money's worth from this guy if we pay him a load of money? How many productive all-pro years does he have left? And I think they decided then that there weren't enough. So that's why they traded him. The question, I mean, Huff's not going to have any trouble playing a lot of snaps. My question is he going to have any trouble playing quality snaps?
Yeah.
We don't know that. They feel confident that they know that. But again, he's not been asked to do what he's going to be asked to do this year in Vic's defense. So I guess we'll see in time. But he's a young player, an ascending player who can rush the passer, and that's what it's all about. So we'll see.
Speaking of players that rush the passer, Nolan Smith is a guy that's starting to get a little bit more eyes, a little bit more pressure. I'm starting to hear a little bit more people talk about, him stepping up. He is a first-round draft pick. What do you expect from Nolan this year?
Well, again, I mean, he didn't play much last year. When he did, it wasn't like we said, "Wow, we need to see more of this."
He did, Tahoe. He claimed.
So I mean, he needs to be productive. I mean, this defensive line can be good, but there are a lot of question marks right now, and Nolan Smith clearly is one of them. But he needs to step up. He needs to play like he, like a first rounder that he was. And if that doesn't happen, then all eyes fall on Howie for drafting him.
Yeah, and I think it's a big year on the interior for Milton Williams as well. I think he's got a chance to make a lot of money, Damo, coming into a contract year. Obviously, in theory, he's going to get a lot of those Fletcher Cox snaps. They're going to be divvied up. So you're still going to build the defense on Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, but Milton's going to be a big part of it. And I think he's a good player. And I'm surprised a little bit that the Eagles haven't pushed, and maybe they have behind the scenes to get him extended. But, that's a difficult one because maybe if you're Milton Williams, you're looking at it and saying, all right, I'm going to bet on myself because I'm going to get more snaps.
Yeah.
You're going to put up more numbers and that number goes up. So maybe that's a little bit more of a difficult negotiation. I'm sure the Eagles are trying to get the cost-effective deal done. But Milton Williams, bigger part of this team than most realize, Dama?
I think he's been under the radar. His appeal is in his versatility. You can move him around a little bit. I mean, in college, he played end and tackle. He can do the same here. I think Vic will move him around. And I'm not surprised that they didn't redo him. He played at an even level. My guess is, like you said, he probably thinks he's about ready to break out and that he can make a killing after this season. And they weren't willing to pay him. They weren't willing to overpay him right now. So I think both sides will be willing to wait till the end of the year. But he's a nice chess piece to have because of the versatility. I don't think he's ever going to make a Pro Bowl, but he's a good guy to have.
How about the depth at that room, Damo? I mean, you have Jalen, you have Jordan Davis. Technically, they're both unproven. I think we've seen enough to be confident in them, or to
I'm going to disagree with you. I think Jalen Carter's proven himself.
I do too. I really do too. But he did 10, 11 games, John. We got to see a little bit more, I would say, but I'm not questioning the talent there. But what about after them, Damo? I mean, I think Milton's a great piece, but is that enough, or should Howie be looking to add a move there? Or maybe it's another 22 situation where you add a guy late like a Sue and a Linval Joseph. In that case, maybe somebody like that comes along to bolster the depth. But what do you think of the depth at that position?
Well, I mean, after that, they've got some guys that can. I guess the best word to use is serviceable. Yeah. I mean, guys like Mustafa, who they added, Ajomo, Tuiapo.
Marlon T. Don't forget Marlon. Yeah.
So, I mean, they got guys that can go out there and give them some snaps, and fill, gives these other guys some breathers in a rotation. But it all comes down to Davis and Carter stepping up and being Pro Bowl players this year.
Yeah, and Jalen was interesting because for whatever reason, I mean, he was second in Defensive Player of the Year, but Rookie Defensive Player of the Year voting to Will Anderson. You could argue he should have been first still, but they made the playoffs. That to me was about their late run versus the Eagles' collapse. I think Jalen was the best player, defensive player in last year's draft class. Do you have any concerns about him from that perspective, or is it all just conditioning and, maybe maturity, some of those types of issues?
I don't have any concerns about his ability, John. His head is what the only concern I have is whether whether the drive is there to keep getting better and better. He doesn't have Fletcher around now to kick his butt. We'll see. I think he's, I mean, most of these guys eventually grow up, and I think he will too. And if he does, and if he stays in shape, I think he can be a terrific player and a difference-making player in the middle there. Because I think, that's where, every great pass rush, including theirs 2 years ago, has to get inside pressure.
Yeah.
Tom, let's go to the offensive side of the ball. I want to bring up something that is close to Johnny Mac's heart. He's been in a lot of discussions this offseason with me and many of our other guests about it. What's your evaluation, or what's your expectation for how the Philadelphia Eagles will use Saquan Barkley this year? I mean, they made the big signing. I'm okay with the money aspect of it, but Howie's kind of set the stage. This is an elite, game-changing type of player. How do you think the Eagles are going to use Saquon Barkley in this offense?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this in the past, Xander. I mean, I think he's going to be used more in the passing game than maybe John does, or it will be more effective in the passing game than John does. I mean, you can use your running backs without – I mean, the perception is that you're just dumping it out to them, and that's not. I mean, there's guys you get the ball to in space that can do some great things, and I think Barkley's one of them. And by getting him the ball that way, it also doesn't take the pounding that giving him the ball 300 times a game inside does. Now he's going to run the ball a lot. There's no doubt about that. But this is going to be a passing offense. I mean, they believe that's how you win in this league, and that's what they're going to do. I mean, again, I said this last week. I think we're going to see a lot of two-back stuff with Gainwell and Barkley, and then one of them will eventually probably motion into the slot or outside or somewhere, and be used in a lot of different ways in the passing game. So, I think that's where Barkley can make a difference this year. I don't expect him to put up 1,500 yards. That's just not going to happen because I don't think he's going to get the ball enough to put up those kind of numbers. But he can be a 1,000-yard rusher this year. But I think he can also be a guy that catches 70 passes in the passing game and makes a difference there for not only himself and the offense, but for guys like Brown and Devontae Smith, who suddenly are going to be a lot more open than they were at the end of the last season when people were sticking on him like glue, because that's where Jalen was looking.
Any concern about the tread? Sorry, gentlemen. Any concern about the tread? I mean, he played a lot of snaps. That's a consistent theme too with running backs in the NFL, especially over the last decade. Teams just don't pay running back second contracts. They try and get them on their, in their rookie contracts when they're young and good and their legs are fresh, and a lot of them burn out quick. Any concern about Saquon's tread on the tires?
Oh, sure. I mean, you mentioned second contracts. I mean, Eagles haven't given any to running backs since.
Well, they got burned by DeMarco Murray.
Yeah. We got to go way back to, I guess,
for the Eagles, you got to go back to, I guess, Shady
Shady. But yeah, I mean, that's why Xander, I think they'll use him a lot in the passing game, because it doesn't take as big a toll on a running back's legs as it would be if he's, you're just handing him the ball and pointing him to the line.
Well, here's what I and I'm not saying to you, Damo, but for a lot of people that criticize me about the Barkley stuff, and there's a lot of them, to me, it's mainly about the quarterback. Like, if you go back to Nick's last season in Indianapolis, when he had Nyheim Hines, and more importantly, had Phillip Rivers, Nyheim caught 60-something balls. And Jonathan Taylor was in the 30s, mid-30s as their two running backs, because that's the way Phillip Rivers played the position.
Right.
I don't think Jalen plays the position. So I think we've been through this every year in the Jalen Hurts era. First, it was Miles, and you remember, a lot of people forget, Miles showed some real, solid. As a rookie, he was better than we all thought as a receiver. You remember the big Carson Wentz pass in Washington, Dama? We're like, where did this come from? Yeah. And he was looking good, and he's going to be, Miles might be a better receiver. No, he got progressively worse as it went on. Then they got Kenny Gainwell until all the fans turned on him. Not all, but a lot of them. He was a hell of a receiver in college at Memphis, to the point he missed the COVID season, but to the point they played him a slot receiver. He was a big-time receiver, and he's been all right. He can catch the football. There's no issues with that. And then they got DeAndre Swift, who was really good in Detroit in the NFL as a receiving back. Now, there were a lot of questions about him as a runner, but not as a receiver. And the Eagles got him. And I remember week one, Dama, they're playing New England. They got him working out with the receivers. This Bill Belichick. Oh, we might use this guy. We might put him in. Nothing. And here we are again with the same thing. I think it has more to do with the quarterback. It's not what he wants to do. It's not his strength. And can he get better at it? Sure. But do you want him to do you want to change him as a player? I don't necessarily want to change him into Phillip Rivers. To utilize the back like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think you have to change him to get him to be a little bit better at throwing to the running backs. I mean, you got to use them in today's game. And, you look at last year, it's kind of an interesting situation. You look at the number of catches by their running backs; it was pretty damn high. I mean,
it's not bad.
It was considerably higher than the year before. What was awful was the yards
efficiency, the efficiency,
and a lot of that had to do with Jalen when he was getting him the ball, or the offense. I mean, I think that's what's going to change. I don't think Jalen's averse to throwing to those guys. I mean, he's working out with Saquon Barkley. They ain't doing that for for laughs.
No. He's working out with Johnny Wilson too.
He doesn't want him to get familiar with his handoffs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just that that they need to get these guys the ball in space in better positions than they did last year. Where they
there's that with DeAndre and to be quite honest, DeAndre's not here because he didn't like the offense, Philadelphia guy and all, because he wanted the ball more in the passing game. And I thought, you think about those bubble screens, and I remember saying back in training camp, Domo, why don't you use DeAndre Swift on the bubble screens? Maybe you got a running back out there who can break a tackle or make somebody miss rather than a receiver who's not quite as good as that type of thing. They never did it. I don't know. I just, to me, I call it off-season talk. And I look more at the quarterback. Like I said, there's certain guys that are going to use running backs. And then from the second part of it, Saquon has never proven to be, forget about Christian McCaffrey. Even I think the two best receiving backs after Christian have been Kamara and Aaron Jones. He's never been those guys. Those guys can catch the ball down the field. They can do some things. I've just never seen that from Saquon. Now, maybe it's the supporting cast.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. It's a lot easier when Aaron Rodgers is throwing wheel routes to Aaron Jones than Daniel Jones. So maybe that's it. But boy, it seems like I go through it every year with this incarnation of Eagles. If Phillip Rivers came out of retirement, I'm all on board. Saquon's going to be a big part of the passing game. Right now, I don't think he's going to be a big part of the passing game, but we'll see. And I hope I'm wrong. And I hope for all Eagles fans, I'm wrong. And I get why we talk about skill position players, Damo, but that's where I want to go next with you. The offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know Brandon Thorne, but he's one of those guys on Twitter and X and social media. He's one of the best offensive line people. When you talk about digesting the league as a whole, he graded the Eagles offensive line, even without Jason Kelce as number 2. Warren Sharp, another great football guy, had him at number 4. This is still the strength of the football team, the offensive line. We all talk about skill position, but it's the offensive line. Nothing matters until those guys get involved. And when they start pushing people around, that's where the Eagles are going to win and lose games. Am I incorrect or correct?
You are correct, John, as always. No, I mean, regardless of the change at center, I mean, yes, they lost a Hall of Famer, but they basically still have 3 All-Pro players at left and right tackle and left guard. So as long as they're there, I mean, the time to worry will be when Lane Johnson retires in probably 10 years. But
yeah, he might keep going. Lane's in great shape.
I'm assuming everything Kellen Moore is going to do this year is with that, the fact that he's got because he had one in Dallas. He knows what to do with a strong offensive line. They had, because that was one of the best lines in the league as well.
Yeah.
What do you make of staying on the offensive line? What do you make of the situation here with Mekhi Becton? It's interesting to me because he's on a 1-year deal, but I don't know if you heard his press conference comments. He really likes Jeff Stoutland, and he seems to really like playing here in Philadelphia. Not that he's played here long, but he seems to like the atmosphere, likes the coaching and stuff like that. He's a tackle. Should they try and put him in at guard? I mean, to me, I would love to have him be the guy maybe that Stoutland can coach up and you have him there to replace Lane Johnson. But like you just said, Lane might play for another 3-4 years. Like, who knows when that could be. Is putting him at guard a good move? And do you think the Eagles will give him a legitimate chance to win that job over Tyler Steen?
Well, it's an interesting question, Xander. We'll see. I mean, the thing about Stout is, he took a guy that never played football and has turned him into a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
What's he going to do with a
crazy.
first-round pick? A guy. I mean, granted, Mekhi Becton has not been the player everybody thought he would be when he got drafted. But if anybody can, take him to that level, certainly it's Stoutland. Now, you're right. Do you just keep him there as a safety valve in case your tackles get hurt, or do you think about moving them inside and using a big body there? They like big tackles. I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, there's a reason, that they with their left guard that they kept him there instead of thinking about moving him to center. I think it's something they're obviously considering. Only time will tell whether they use him there or not.
Yeah, maybe one of your next books, Dama, should be about Jordan Mailata. Boy, every once in a while I step back and I think, how crazy is that? It's just, and now we take it for granted. It changes so quickly, and now he's one of the best left tackles in football. That's insane from where he came from. He needed help putting on his helmet. He didn't know how to put on a helmet. And now he's a leader. I heard Kelsey talking about his celebrity bartending thing. I heard somebody asked him about Jordan, and it was about a leadership question. And Kelsey actually went to Jordan. It's like people gravitate towards him. That is one that's going to go down as whoever you want to give credit for that. Obviously Stout for the development, but Howie for finding him. I remember that story. Stoutland was on a golf vacation, and Howie called him up and said, "You got to look at this guy."
Yeah.
And he went down to Florida. He's working out at IMG. That is just a crazy story. And I'm sure someone will tell it at some point better. But even the day of his first start, it just was a timing thing. I don't know if you remember, Dama, we had happened to get Stoutland for some reason. And even he was like, I don't know. I think he's ready. But I remember that. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was against Nick Bosa. And we're all like, this is going to be a disaster. And he goes out there against maybe the best pass rusher in football. And he was damn good. He got beat a couple times, but he was damn good from day one. It's an amazing story. Joe Osman's a part of it as well. Smoking Joe. He used to beat him like a drum in practice and turned him into this great player. It's a tremendous story. Every once in a while, I like to talk about it to remind myself of just how crazy it is that they developed this guy into what he is. He's gotten 2 $60 million extensions. When does that happen?
I've said this many times that on Stout's tombstone, it's going to say, I developed Jordan Mailata. I made a guy that never played football an all-pro.
Yeah. And, but then there's the Andre Dillard. It's crazy. Now, how much skill did Andre Dillard have? And, he didn't turn into what he was supposed to be. So it's not as easy as sometimes fans presume it is to get these players to where they need to be. And I guess we'll go there with the coaching staff. That's another one where Jimmy put in his dumpster fire series as a potential thing that can go off the rails. And I'm with them 100%. I don't from moment one, Damo, I never liked this plan. To me, they look like they're trying to straddle a fence. Well, we don't want to get rid of Nick, but we want to bring in new ideas. I don't like that. It can work. Anything can work, but typically that's not the way you do it, right?
No, I mean, we've talked about the CEO coach and everything, but I'm sure Nick is not. This clearly wasn't his choice. Which I think as you guys have probably talked about it since it's happened. Jaworski's comments about Jalen's reaction when he was asked a while back about Nick. you know, a lot of that, goes to the fact that Nick didn't have a lot of say in this. I guarantee you, he was told you're getting rid of Brian Johnson, and I guarantee you that Jalen's still trying to get over that, even though he and Brian were not on the same page last year. Brian still was a good friend, and now he's learning a new offense again, and so I was not surprised, or have not been surprised, that there's not a lack of enthusiasm, that we haven't heard him say, "Gee, I love this offense. I can't wait to play it." I mean, it's going to take time. It's going to take time for him to get over the fact that they fired Johnson so abruptly. I agree with you, John, but I think they're in a better place with Kellen Moore running this offense, and Nick just kind of having some input. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing overall. If it works out, obviously it's a big if. But last one for me, Damo. What do you think of Dallas Goedert in this offense? Kellen Moore is a guy that likes to go to his tight end. I'm one of the people that thinks Dallas Goedert has been underutilized in this offense. Maybe it's a Jalen Hurts thing. He just doesn't seem to, go to the middle of the field too much. At least he struggled with it last year. What do you think Dallas Goedert can be in this offense with Kellen Moore?
Yeah, I mean, I think he needs to be a bigger part of it, especially on third down. I mean, they were a good third down team last year, but they still. I mean, they need to use Dallas. It takes the pressure off everybody else in that offense. So, he had 50. He's a 55 catch guy most of his career here. We talk about him being the greatest. One of the best. Blocking tight ends in the league that can also catch passes, but that number needs to be bigger. I mean, 2 years ago, he led the league in among tight ends in yards after the catch, but still, I think Jalen needs to rely on him more. And you're right. I mean, Kellen Moore has probably been emphasizing that a lot this offseason. Doesn't mean he's telling him to go away from AJ and Devontae, or but that's why. I lump Dallas into the same category as Saquon and Gainwell. I mean, these are guys you got to give the ball to in the passing game. Doesn't have to be. I'm not saying they have to catch. The Dallas has to catch 10 passes a game, but you got to spread that ball around to all these guys. It'll make the offense better, and it's something that they didn't do enough of last year. He became too focused on those two wide receivers.
Yep. Agreed.
At P Damo, make sure you follow Damo on X. Does work for the 33rd team, does work here for us, does a tremendous job. Merrill Station, WBCB during the season. One number that doesn't have to get bigger, Damo, I'll end it here with you, is the 4-point-something billion the NFL got gashed with for gouging people for years on Sunday Ticket. There will be many, many appeals, many lawyers, as Andrew Brandt says. I don't know if it'll end up there. But, man, if they eventually got to pay out numbers like that, and because it was antitrust, it can go up to $14 billion, it can be times 3. That's going to affect the product on the field at some point, isn't it? Isn't that going to scale back things?
Well, I mean, God knows how long it's going to take before all these appeals are heard.
Yeah.
And this one's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Talk to me in 2030.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm just saying, man.
Sorry for the league, for the.
I'm not feeling sorry for them. They were gouging people. All you had to do was give out of market. It was the simplest thing.
I know.
Out of market, pay-per-view. If you're an Eagles fan living in Bismarck, North Dakota, wherever, $14.99 by the game, but they gouged them for hundreds of dollars for many, many years for everybody to get the whole product. I don't feel bad for them. It's the exact opposite. The one thing, it's always about money. This is going to be significant if it stands. And you're right. It's going to go probably the Supreme Court.
The NFL has not. I mean, their history in court has not been great. I mean, you go back.
No. You know why? Because they never want to go to. They never want to have Goodell under oath and to get in those situations. So they're willing to settle. I assume they'll be willing to settle down the road because they don't want to air out the dirty laundry ever, because there's some dirty laundry there.
I mean, their court cases have changed the whole history of the NFL. I mean, you go back to free agency, which the players got in a court case. You go back to the 80s. I mean, they lost to the USFL in an antitrust case. The only reason that, there would have been some USFL teams in the NFL, if not for the fact that the USFL decided to use Donald Trump as its face in that court case, and the jury awarded them $1. Because they had such disdain for Donald. So
$1.
Yeah, I mean, they're not very good in court, but this one's gonna, like Xander said, this one's gonna go to 2030 before they give up and pay the money.
Well, yeah, they can't give up on this one. They can't. But yeah, everybody can bookmark the site. You're going to get some money at some point. So if you've been paying for that thing, yeah, and the NFL deserves it. They've been gouging people for years. Absolutely. So, and they continue to gouge people. But I don't know if you're willing. I always talk about merchandising, Damo. I'm like, I'm surprised I haven't gone to the Oregon route on college, where they have like a different uniform every week, different helmet. They've always struggled. I'm like, if the people allow you to pick their pockets, you might as well pick their pockets. That's how I look at it.
I mean, it's not going to be very long before we see advertising strewn all across their uniforms.
Yeah. I'm surprised we aren't there as well.
I know. Everybody else does too. Other sports leagues are all over. NBA's got them on the jersey. Even the NHL added helmets this year. I mean, it's definitely coming. Damo, thanks for the great insight today. As always, you do a great job. You bring great insight to the show every single Friday. We appreciate you being here. Thanks, Damo. Appreciate it, man.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Thanks, bud.
Paul Domowitch joining us on Birds 365. Great stuff from Damo. As always, Johnny Mac, I want to pick your brain on that NFL thing when we come back a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid. I need you to explain this to me like I'm a fifth grader here. I know it's a problem, but like they weren't like forcing people to pay for this product. I mean, isn't it just kind of the nature of the beast? If you don't live somewhere where that game is being televised, you're going to have to, make big strides to get it. I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding it fully, but it doesn't really feel like the NFL is that at fault.
Well, they're not at fault until somebody complains, and a bunch of people complain, and then it comes into an antitrust case, and you have it comes to light, because remember, when you're a monopoly in this country, they will break it up at certain points, and baseball is the one sport for many years, because it was America's pastime. We talk about that had protection from that kind of stuff, but the NFL does not have protection from being monopoly. They are monopoly, and if enough people complain about it, and that's what's going on here, and all of a sudden you have that type of level of case and antitrust violations, class action, where you get a whole group of people together. Lawyers are a part of it as well, because they see an opportunity to cash in, so they grab a whole bunch of people who've been overpaying for this product, and there's no competition. It's a tough thing to argue in court. So from that standpoint, it's no surprise that the judgment came. Will it hold up over time in appeals? That's the tougher case. And the NFL has a ton of money to keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting. So that's where those big entities tend to win out, because nobody can spend as much as them, not only for the legal counsel and the effectiveness of the legal counsel, but to be able to take things to that level, you got to have deep pockets. And they have deep pockets.
Legal fees are unbelievable, though, Johnny Mac. Like, you see some of these people. I mean, you see billionaires, and in some cases, or multi-millionaires, 100 millionaires, that they go bankrupt because of legal fees. Like, legal fees can be really crazy, especially in a case of this magnitude. It's unbelievable how much stuff costs.
I know Florio. Florio's a lawyer by trade. Obviously, he doesn't practice. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk. He estimated, it's been going on for 10 years. He estimated their attorney's fees are already about, anywhere from 50 million to 100 million. Well, there's not a lot of people that can afford to basically that's nothing for them.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people that can fight with that over a long period of time.
Pretty insane. Let's go to our buddy Terry here. Look at this. $20 from our man Terry. Terry, thank you, bro. That support of the show, the support of the network goes a long way. Can't thank you enough for that type of super chat. We appreciate it very much, brother. He says, Terry Hayes, $20 says, I'm excited to see how this team's going to play. I just have a feeling it's going to be fun to watch. I agree with that, Terry. I'm most excited about the offense. I think Kellen's going to surprise a lot of people and be really good. I'm hopeful, but we'll see. He says, just had our balcony catch fire and some fire damage and a lot of water damage in my apartment. Geez, Terry, I should be sending you $20, brother. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everybody is safe in your family and all your friends and everybody. But again, thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the support of Birds 365 and of JAKIB Sports. We appreciate it very much, more than you know. Let's get to our commercial break. Terry, thanks again, man. We really do appreciate that. Let's get to our commercial break. Johnny Mac, 20 minutes away from our man, Ed Kratz, who's been really bringing some good comedic relief to the show recently. I've been loving the segments with Ed. So we'll talk to Ed in about 20 minutes. Stay tuned, everybody, on the Friday edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.